What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Perhaps. It's been an interesting week. We'll talk all about it. It's good to be here. I'm glad y'all are here. And before we start, I'm testing out different microphones right now. I'm using a shotgun mic that's supposed to be like for a camera, but I'm using it as a podcast mic. And it should sound a lot better. But maybe I messed up the settings and I might sound weird or clip. Hopefully it's good. So yeah, we're experimenting, y'all. It's okay. It's a podcast. So that's why it might sound a little bit different, but maybe it doesn't sound different. But anyway, also let's put in some personal stuff in the beginning, and I'll explain why in a bit. I got a book coming out. My second book. My first book was The God Who Riots, which came out 2022. My second book, coming out next year, June 23rd, is called You Don't Need a Calling, an anti-capitalist manifesto for a life of purpose. And it's really good. Right now, we're in the copy editing stage where they proofread it, get all the typos out, make sure some of the grammar is right and stuff, and formatting and all that. And I just finished the first round of that, first overview of that. And I'm excited for it. I'm excited for y'all to read it. I think all of you will really like it. And this episode's for the real ones, okay? Some of these social media gurus out there say that you should start your thing, a video or podcast or article or whatever, with like a really strong hook and just immediately tell them what you're going to talk about right at the beginning. And I get that. But this episode, nah. This episode, I'm kind of trying to thin out the audience a bit. Like, this is kind of a boring intro. Talking about my microphone. If you don't know me, it's like, who cares? Plug in a book, who cares? And the thing is, I just want the people who at least know me a little bit listening to this one or watching this one on YouTube. And here's why. We're going to talk a bit about Charlie Kirk. And there's a reason I didn't put his name in the title or immediately say his name, because I don't want random strangers coming in here who don't know me, who just want an argument. So if you're like a conservative or a Charlie Kirk fan, this episode isn't for you. If you're just here to come in and try to have an argument, tell me exactly what he said that's problematic. Tell me the exact take that's fascist. Tell me blah, 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 blah. This isn't for you. Just Google it. Go somewhere else. Okay, bye. This episode is more for some left-leaning people who want to have a deeper conversation about violence and nonviolence in relation to this whole discourse. Because I feel like people are being very reductive with the way they talk about it, very narrow. And so I just want to give a bit of a wider perspective. So that's what this episode is about. I actually tried recording this a couple times before this recording here, and I kept putting in too many like disclaimer. I was just rambling disclaimers because this topic could be complicated. I'm like, I'm rambling too much. I haven't even got into what I want to talk about yet. But the thing is, I didn't even really want to talk about this. Even like after Charlie Kirk was shot and the discourse started, and then people are arguing about the way that people were discoursing started from all sides, it was already so annoying. And I decided a while back that I don't want to participate in the type of content you commonly see consuming people's feeds from leftists who are just constantly discoursing about discourse, about discourse, about discourse. Because it could seem like if you don't really dig in and find certain leftist voices, it could seem like that's all leftists do is just critique the way that other leftists critique. And it can be hard to even find like the original critique in the rabbit hole. It's just constant critique of a critique of a critique of a critique. And I decided I don't want to participate in that. if I see discourse where I feel like I don't like the way people are talking about a certain thing, I'm like, I don't want to be a part of that. But also I'm thinking there's a lot of people who may watch me talking about something and didn't even see the original discourse. And so it's just annoying. And so, but here's the thing. This time it was different. This is a special case because I feel like a lot of people are confused. And so yesterday, it's Thursday night, by the way, that I'm recording this. So it's also possible some big news happened from now to tomorrow morning. But so yesterday, a few hours into the discourse, I decided to post a little Instagram reel and talk a bit about it with the same thing in mind, where I felt like people were just confused and I want to add a little bit of clarity to this. And so that's what this episode is too. Because Charlie Kirk is important to me. Also, like from my political perspective, Charlie Kirk is just a symptom of a much larger oppressive system. And I'd rather talk more about that or about larger symptoms. And also, I'm going through a lot in my personal life right now, so I'm more selective with when I do decide to post stuff online. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So I feel like people don't know how to talk about violence and nonviolence, especially people in progressive circles where, and especially in progressive Christian circles. And I'm a Christian. And I mean, when it comes to the word progressive, I think if we're talking in a technical sense, I would call myself like more of a leftist. I mean, I don't like all these labels anyway, because they're so muddied and confusing to people because of how abused all these labels have become. I'm also not interested in progress just for progress's sake. I care more about the liberation of the oppressed. I care more about the working class being free from the chains of capitalism needing to be dismantled and replaced by a system where the means of production, the means of making things and distributing things is actually owned by communities and the workers themselves. You know, that's all socialism is. And so I'm more interested in that. But I was going to say, but when it comes to like the wider vernacular, cultural vernacular, or people who aren't super deep into all these definitions and descriptions, whatever, I'm a progressive. Because I think a lot of people just see progressive as like somebody who's just like cool, somebody who's cool with gay people, isn't homophobic, or isn't transphobic, isn't Islamophobic, isn't hateful toward immigrants, like actually wants a better world for everybody, you know? Like that type of, I think that general vibe is what people think progressivism as. And so, yeah, sure. But I think the problem in those circles where people are just progressive as a general vibe of loving everyone, equality for everyone, peace for everyone, without like stronger political theory or economic analysis or anything like that. Topics like these, like what happened to Charlie Kirk, can be very confusing to people. Because I think people are like, oh, don't we love everyone? Especially these progressive Christians. Don't we love everyone? Aren't we supposed to stand up for everyone? And so when someone like Charlie Kirk dies, is killed, who was extremely hateful and bigoted and had a large role in leading to policies that are harming a lot of people, that are causing great violence to everyone, people feel a need to appeal to some sort of nonviolence and say, well, we should stick up for Charlie Kirk too, and we should love Charlie Kirk too, and we should defend him too. And I think that's just because they don't have a larger vision of the world they're trying to build beyond very vague utopian ideas of loving everyone and everyone being equal, everyone having what they want and stuff or need. And it's just, I get it. It can be confusing because we don't have these conversations, especially our absolute crap algorithms. It's so hard to find good conversations about these topics. It's just a bunch of rage bait and clout goblins in these political discourse algorithm streets out here. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of rambling a bit, but I'm just trying to frame things in a way that's helpful. And the reason I'm being kind of careful in the way I'm framing things is because, like I said, people I think are very confused and they don't know what to think and they don't know how to talk about these things because they hardly ever get talked about. So let's just jump right into it. I could say more about that in general, but let's just stop with the disclaimers, okay? Let's stop with all the context. And so here's the thing. First of all, I feel like progressive Christians, left-leaning people who want to love everyone, who want everyone to be equal, I think, and people who care about victims of violence, I think we need to have a deeper conversation and realize that we need to not think so binary about violence and nonviolence, like violence is always bad, nonviolence is always good. And I think people usually are able to stretch their imagination a bit on that topic, but only when you push them. Like I've seen certain progressive Christian preachers go on and on about violence is always bad. Even when the oppressed respond with violence, then they're just as bad as their oppressors, which is a terrible thing to say and completely wrong. But I've talked to some of those progressive Christian preachers, like outside of the sermon, after the congregation has gone home or we're hanging out somewhere else, and pushing them on that. And you give them scenarios of like, well, what about self-defense? What about someone who's being killed and fights back? Or what about a whole people group who are being killed and fights back? Like in cases of decolonization, people fighting against military dictatorships. What about Nat Turner, who was called by God and the liberative gospel of Jesus to fight back and kill slaveholders? And when you're able to get into those different situations, some of those progressive preachers are able to actually admit, okay, yeah, sure, there are situations where violence is justified. But what's annoying is they're only able to say that if you like push them in private. It's like, it would have been nice if you would have said that to the whole congregation and give them a more holistic, full understanding of these topics, violence and nonviolence. And so I feel like people usually are able to think bigger on that, but they struggle to do it themselves, I think. And the reason I think it's important is because I think there is a larger effort by systems of oppression to paint the oppressed as violent and deserving of being suppressed, of all their efforts to be suppressed and to be stuck in the position they are, subservient to an oppressive government. And when we just go along with the rhetoric that their violence is just as bad as the oppressor's violence, then we're just being used as tools to further justify oppression. And I'll get a little bit deeper in that as we keep going. I actually wanted to say that point later. I got a couple points that I wanted to say, but there's that. We'll talk a little bit. But first, I did want to say the whole idea of violent rhetoric. I made a little Instagram video yesterday where I talked about the violent rhetoric argument, because there's a lot of people saying that the violent rhetoric is what led to Charlie Kirk being killed. Also, I'm putting this on YouTube. There's a video version if you didn't know. I'm thinking, dang, I'm saying words like violent and kill. I wonder if I'm going to get censored, if they're gonna like hide this video, because that happens sometimes. You gotta like censor yourself on social media. It's annoying. But that's part of the problem. People don't get to have these conversations. It's so annoying. But anyway, oh man, that's so annoying. Where was I? Oh yeah, so people saying that, first off, that the right and people like Charlie Kirk need to stop with the violent rhetoric, but that doesn't actually lead to the end of violence. And then people telling left-wingers that their violent rhetoric is what led to Charlie Kirk being killed, and they need to calm down with the violent rhetoric, but that doesn't stop violence either. But I think the thing people don't understand is that violent rhetoric didn't get us here. Living in a violent world is what got us here. The United States has always been deeply violent. It's ingrained in the DNA of the United States since the very beginning of colonization and enslavement and constant imperialism and racism and sexism and homophobia. And today, I think a lot of people are looking around and seeing all the violence going on. I mean, there's the violence of poverty, violence against homeless people, violence of people losing their jobs, people who are seeing immigrant families being taken, torn apart. There's like 60,000 immigrants being held in detention camps by ICE in very inhumane conditions. There's the U.S. aid cuts that people say will lead to 14 million deaths over the next 5 years. We know our tax dollars are being spent to fund a genocide against Palestinians. And there's school shootings again and again and again. The Evergreen school shooting that happened the same day that Charlie Kirk was killed. And it's like, this is, I only listed a little bit. We can go on and on, but this is just the culture. And so I think people who are paying attention to all that violence, it makes complete sense that of course someone like Charlie Kirk was killed. And yet we have other people who are typically in more privileged positions, where they're privileged enough to be able to ignore all that, who are shocked and saying that America is becoming a violent place. Becoming a violent place. America is becoming a scary place to live. When others know that it's always been violent, it's always been a scary place to live, typically for people who are poor and marginalized. And so I think we're seeing very different perspectives here because of the differences in our individual material conditions. But I think a big thing, as people are looking around at all this violence that people are seeing, is a feeling of powerlessness. That was one of the first things I thought of when I heard the news. Is I think there's a lot of people who feel like there's nothing we can do. We don't have control. These mass deportations are happening. American tax dollars going to fund genocide. Trump being exposed as the pedophile friend with Epstein. And it's like, we could just consume all this information and then just not do anything to stop it. It's just happening completely outside of our control. And from that perspective, it makes sense why people would start to feel like, well, I guess maybe something will happen if I shoot somebody. And that's awful. That's the point that people are getting to. And I think people are some people in that position whose mind goes to that place feel like any action is better than no action. But the thing is, I think what people like if this dude is just some vigilante who very much disagreed with Charlie Kirk's politics, the guy who shot him, I think people like him need to realize need to think bigger. Any action is not better than no action. We need to have a larger strategy. We need to think about the actual interests of the oppressed, the actual interests of the working class, and how we can better our conditions, and how actions can actually influence our larger conditions, can actually get us a step forward toward liberation. But just taking out one singular symptom that can easily be replaced, it's not thinking about a larger strategy that's going to lead toward liberation. And so that's where my critique comes from, you know? And yet, the critique that really annoys me is, well, first of all, we have some people celebrating, posting memes, joking around. And the thing is, it makes sense. And I'm tired of the tone policing. And I think from this perspective I was saying before, that while we're living in a violent society that's always been violent, I think we're seeing exactly how you'd expect people to react who grew up in a very violent society. It makes sense. And the thing that annoys me is people trying to tone police those people. And I get not wanting to see people joke about it. Like maybe it's too much for you to handle emotionally. That makes sense. And it makes sense to say, hey, look, like I don't want to see that. And unfollow people who are joking about it or celebrating or talking positively about it. Unfollow or mute or just get off social media. Yeah, you do you. But when you're going in and sending DMs and commenting and making posts about people who are celebrating or joking about Charlie Kirk's death and telling them off and telling them how insensitive they are and how they need to have empathy, I think you're just ignorant. And I think you're not understanding. First of all, it's mostly white people, damn near all white people who are clearly coming from a privileged perspective, who seem to relate a lot more with Charlie Kirk than all the people, the immigrants, the black people, the trans people, the queer people who have to face violence because of the type of violence that has been stirred up by Charlie Kirk's rhetoric and organization, Turning Point, for years now. I think people who are experiencing the violence that came as a consequence of Charlie Kirk's work feel a bit of catharsis when something like this happens. And it's like they don't think this is going to lead to liberation. It's just like a moment of catharsis. Let them feel however they want to feel. Just let them. And like I said earlier, I think the big problem, because I can go all around these different critiques and be like, well, I understand where you're coming from, blah, blah, blah. Except for the one that I really am vehemently against is the critique that people who celebrated his death or made memes about it are just as bad as Charlie Kirk and people like Charlie Kirk. That's what some of these people were saying. Maybe some of you have seen it. People I was seeing were mostly these progressive, liberal Christians who I think just aren't seeing the bigger picture. And like I alluded to earlier, I think the big problem is you need to ask yourself, whose cause are you ultimately trying to serve when you critique oppressed people who are fighting back? Or you're critiquing the way that oppressed people critique things? Because the system wants us to believe that the oppressed are the real enemies, so that we tone police them, suppress them, keep them down, frame them as just as bad as their oppressors. And just because they're talking in a way that seems violent. Because the ruling class wants to shape this narrative that anything that threatens their power, or even anything that scares them, is terrorism. And then they use that label of terrorism to scare the public, make them scared of terrorists, and then manufacture consent to build a stronger government, a more controlling government, a stronger surveillance state, more police, more military, more control. And then at that point, just posting criticism online of the government is labeled as terrorism. And the surveillance state allows them to see everything everyone is saying all the time and then punish them for terrorism. And this is already starting to happen. This was already happening. People who are protesting against the Israeli government's genocide against Palestinians, having their visas taken away. And now the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State said that they want to look into the State Department taking away people's visas for any immigrants who praise, rationalize, or make light of Charlie Kirk's death. And Trump, the night of Charlie Kirk's death, posted this video, which was an AI video. Very weird. An AI video of himself. But anyway, not what we're talking about today. But in his AI video, he called Charlie Kirk a martyr and talked about using this as an opportunity to crack down on leftists, and specifically just their language, saying that they're all super violent and leftist language is what led to this. And I think the big problem of a lot of progressives is that I think they need a better politic. They need a better politic that's actually based on material reality instead of just based on emotions, even if that emotion is love. And I'm all about love, okay? I got a tattoo on my wrist that says love wins. We're all about love. I get it. But when your whole politics is just based on looking at something and saying, is it loving or is it not loving? And if it doesn't look loving to you, which is always very subjective, then you're against it. Even if the thing you're saying you're against, like the oppressed fighting back, could potentially lead long-term to more love. Because it could lead toward liberation. And so I'm not saying like, just stop critiquing and just be pro-violence. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying to think deeper. Think deeper. Especially these white people. Especially these white men who so quickly came with the posts. So quickly. So many people found out Charlie Kirk was shot, not through people posting about what happened, but through people saying, I can't believe people are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. This is so wrong. We have to be like Jesus, and if we celebrate this, then we're just as bad as them. And people are like, oh, Charlie Kirk died? It's like, so that's what I mean when I'm saying so quickly. And it's like, that's your cause? That's your cause? If that is the thing that's so important to you, then you're just volunteering yourself to be used as a tool by systems of oppression that want to paint all oppressed people as scary terrorists who need to be condemned if they step out of line, if they don't talk right. So we'll see what happens next. It's going to get worse. That's also why I'm saying this. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. This whole narrative about terrorism. And so whose side are you on? Are you going to keep critiquing the way that people critique? Are you going to keep tone policing marginalized people because you think, because you don't like the way they talk? Or are you going to shut up and listen and learn and try to develop a deeper material analysis of everything going on? Read your history, read other perspectives. A lot of these white people need to shut up and learn and stop trying to lead everything. Stop trying to be an influencer. Stop trying to be the big hero of the story. And of course, there's a lot of white people that could, that you can talk, you could say things, you could post things. But just think. Just think first for a bit. Think twice, think 3 times, think 4 times, 5 times. And this doesn't just apply to white people. This applies to people of any privileged position, including my own. I'm Mexican. I'm a person of color, but I'm also a man. Like that is part of my privilege that needs to be questioned whenever I want, if I ever want to post something about women, like, or even being in the United States, like, anyone who wants to talk about global politics should consider their position of privilege as living in the United States in the imperial core. So it's the same thing. This isn't just advice for white people. It's it's for anyone with any we're intersectional over here, okay? And so this whole thing was kind of a rant, and but I just had some kind of rambly notes that I just wanted to get through and talk a bit about that. I don't know if I communicated well what I wanted to communicate, but I wanted to get it out there. Like I said, I didn't even really want to have this conversation. I don't want to be the guy critiquing the way people critique. But in this special case, I felt like a lot of people are confused. And hopefully this could bring at least a little bit of clarity for some people. And if not, if only a few people listen to this and it's people who like already agree with me, which is very possible, then you're not alone. If that's all the people who are left at the end of this episode, people who already had the exact same opinion as me throughout this whole episode and already knew everything I said, then all I have to say to you is you're not alone. Things are getting messy. And it is all very scary. And yeah, some of it is very annoying. And you're not alone in seeing that. And so, I appreciate y'all. We'll see you in the next podcast. All right? Bye-bye.